The Leafs are off to California as they get set for one of their final road trips of the season. How important is this road trip? And what can we say about the ticket prices going up in Toronto? It's a never-ending story here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast. It is your daily Maple Leafs podcast here on Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by myself, David Morassutti, and joining me today, once again, is candidate Frank Stanisci. I guess we can't call it a call to the bullpen when it's a well, I guess maybe call to the bullpen again. It's a multiple inning really. See, little baseball humor as the Blue Jays open their season today. Frank, thank you for coming back again.
You're welcome, and a pleasure to be here. And on the topic of the Blue Jays, this popularity of hockey jerseys at baseball games being given away is interesting. I'll tell you that. Throw that tie-in.
Yeah, it is interesting. I what do you feel about that? Actually, like a hockey jersey, but being given out at a blue, like at a baseball game, or a hockey jersey turn. A baseball jersey turned hockey jersey.
Right. So a hockey style jersey being given away at a Blue Jay game. Yeah, we got one last year. It was a George Springer one. I think it was the first one they did like that, or one of the first. Mm-hmm. Now this year they're doing it times 3. So they're doing it 3 times this year. Last year they did it once.
Yeah.
And this year they're not giving it to the first 15,000 people. I think it was last year. The first 45,000 that go. It was very popular.
It's very popular, especially their City Connect jerseys. I got my feelings. It's friends of mine know I have feelings on black Blue Jays jerseys, black Blue Jays jerseys. But I mean, it's
kind of, you mean black and blue jerseys, the bruised look.
Yeah. So I got my feelings on those, but I think. It's nice that the fans are going to be at least. It's a good way to bring fans in. Anytime you add a giveaway, those I don't know if you've ever you talked about those lineups, just people waiting. I've seen lineups where it starts at 6 in the morning for a 1 o'clock start. Which, again, I have feelings about people who do that. Good on you if you got the ability and desire to do that. But if you're one of those people that do it to make money off of it, well, the hustle, I guess it's the hustle play.
My best piece of advice for those of you that want to get one of those jerseys and you don't want to stand in line forever, park closer to the stadium and think indoor parking.
Yeah, you love your little section there.
It's an extra $5 or $10 to park, but you're paying once. And if you go with 4 people and you all get jerseys, it's a good deal. And you know what?
It is a pretty good deal.
And you know what, David? I think, as much as you might say, okay, they're using hockey to sell baseball, there's truth to that. But I think what the real truth is, baseball's the leader on apparel expansion and selling. They had those green hats during the exhibition season. And basically that's the last thing I'm going to say about the Blue Jays, because I know why we're really here.
Yeah. No, but it's true. I mean, I don't really see the Leafs doing a lot of giveaways. I'll say that. But also
they're doing some takeaway. We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. Well, it's good. It's a good little talk about. They're not giving away, but they're certainly going to be taken away. We'll get into that a little bit later about shocker, Leaf games becoming more expensive. But let's talk about the fact that we're coming up on obviously 11 games left in the season, and it's kind of crazy that now the Leafs are going on their California road trip, because They didn't go on they went on their California trip last year. Well, actually, when I was on vacation, so it would have been around New Year's time in January. So this is considered late for this California road trip. I remember this California road trip at times being in November. March feels like a first for me to remember seeing this, but I mean, everyone's got to do it. A lot of Eastern teams right now are on the East Coast, on the West Coast. I watched a little bit of Boston versus Anaheim, and oh my God, the Bruins are brutal to watch. Brutal to watch. It's great if you hate the Bruins, but man, I don't have sympathy for those Bruins fans having to watch what they're going through right now. So yeah, this is definitely one of those situations where yeah, it's going to be a tough sledding a little bit here for the Leafs, as they California road trips haven't always been an issue for them. They actually did quite well on their California road trip last year. And just fair warning that tonight's game, we're recording this Thursday. Tonight's game is at 10:30. You're probably not seeing a podcast from me after the game, because by the time puck drop happens, game's over, and we record, we're talking like 2 a.m. I need sleep. So you're going to probably see a Friday morning record likely. I'll probably stay up and watch a good part of the game. I usually tape the third just in case I wasn't fully have my faculties. What I'm hoping for is the Leafs take care of the San Jose Sharks quite early enough that I don't have to worry about watching. Hopefully, swear to God, if there's overtime, it's not going to be fun. But yeah, this road trip, while it's always a tough, when you go out and you have to change time zones, it does represent a pretty good opportunity for the Leafs here. Especially, yeah, the LA Kings are probably they're the only tough team on paper in this matchup. And it's true, because the Leafs generally have had the Sharks and Ducks number, but you look at where the Leafs currently are in the standings right now, right? They still got that tie with Florida, but they're ahead on the regulation overtime wins tiebreaker. But I don't think people truly understand maybe just how significant this road trip really can be in either to help propel this team or give Florida again another opening.
So in my background, I have a purple Leaf jersey, and that purple Leaf jersey is heading to California. You could say it's like an adventure with Dorothy and Toto. See that Toto thing going on there? I just that's all accidental. I just noticed that. So it's a good subject for they're going to.
Your frame's cropped a little bit, so people aren't really seeing that part.
Okay.
I can see it on the main, because our streams are cropped a little bit. I can see a little. Yeah, I can definitely see a little bit of it.
Absolutely. So the thing of it is, they're going to be going down the Yellow Brick Road, and unfortunately, what they got to worry about are those flying monkeys, and they go on these road trips, and they usually do pretty well. In fact, historically in the past few years, I think they've done better on the road than at home when you factor in what you should do on both. Do you know what I mean? Like I think they're above average winning on the road and below average winning at home. So, road trips aren't something that this team's afraid of. I know Nylander scores most of his goals at home, but, maybe he'll change things this time around. San Jose beat them last time, wasn't it, in overtime? They beat them just recently.
Yeah, so, yeah, the last time they played San Jose, that was they had the 2-0 lead squandered, and they lost that one in overtime.
So they got some revenge on their mind. LA's fighting for a playoff spot. Anaheim isn't so good. But all three of those teams have qualities that could, basically bring the flying monkeys into play. So the Leafs have two recent memories. They know how they played after that silly loss they shouldn't have had. They're going to have to figure out how to avoid that first game and repeat what happened in the second game.
Yeah, I mean, this team has. I'm hoping that what happened with the Flyers game will make this team realize that this is how they need to play against these lesser opponents. Like, I don't think it's any question that when you look at a team like Florida, right? Why has Florida done so well? They don't shy away from these matchups, right? And so Florida over the next, just to give you kind of a break, Florida has 2 games to finish the week. The Leafs have 3, so the Leafs will have an extra game in hand. The Florida will have a game in hand. The Leafs will have played an extra game on Florida by the time next week starts. Florida has Utah and Montreal. Utah, we know not they're kind of up and down, tough to know. Montreal's fighting for a playoff spot. So Florida doesn't have the easiest matchups, and so this is where the Leafs, when you look at San Jose and Anaheim, this is where you got to be like, okay, like we should be able to take care of this. So yeah, and we'll get a little more into the matchup. Actually, why don't we do that now? We'll get more into the matchup against San Jose and just why do we think the Leafs, what they could have probably learned from the last time they played San Jose, what they need to do this time around to avoid a loss against one of the lowly teams in the NHL. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Trade Coffee. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee, but for me, it's an espresso. I got tired of settling for the grocery store brand. Honestly, they just weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade. Let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. I took the quiz, and literally in 1 minute, they matched me with the Blendo Stupendo. It's got a bit of a cocoa and caramel taste to it. I just love the smell of it. Like, you just get to smell the coffee, and it kind of, the aromas just really wake you up. Obviously, if they don't get the first bag right, you don't have to worry because Trade will replace the coffee free until they get it just right. So right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. That's drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL for 40% off your first order. Welcome you back here into the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti, and joining me is my friend, candid Frank Stanisci, with Mike on vacation. He is currently on a boat, which shouldn't surprise anybody. That's I mean, Mike knows. Mike and I know there's never a bad time to go on a cruise. So he is enjoying the seas right now, getting some much needed R&R before, you know, the real grind comes in, because these next few games aren't going to be the, you know, what I'll say is these games are important, but they're not maker. In a lot of ways, the Leafs are battling for this division, but I think we've kind of resided the fact that they could be 1 or 2, and we can kind of see both happening. But obviously, the idea of winning the division sounds so much better, doesn't it?
Yeah, winning the division, but always with the qualifier that there are no guarantees just because you win the division. But the Leafs haven't done that enough to really test the theory on their specific reaction to finishing first. They've only done it if they make it this year, it'll be the 4th time in their history. So it's not something that they've experienced a lot. They've experienced, and we've seen and we've witnessed, David, being the home team and not taking advantage of that home ice advantage. But you gotta lean into home ice advantage. You've got to consider the fact that you get to, you know, make the last change. Those are advantages, and the crowd, of course. Those are advantages that you can't ignore. So yeah, so you're going to try and finish first, but I don't think you try and finish first to the point where you go into the playoffs limping, right? So you don't want to do that either.
Yes.
There's some trepidation in finishing first or getting there. And you know, with this situation, you got 3 teams within a point, right, going for first, and there's only like about 11 games left, which means the difference between finishing first and third is how above 500 you are, because definitely to finish first, you're going to have to go 500. So the question is, 6-5, 7-4, that type of thing is what they're going to need. And your comments about the teams they're playing that they should beat, those are the wins that you need more than anything, because they're the ones that at this time of year, their wins are really hard, because everybody that's trying to make the playoffs is playing the opposite of what I just said for the Leafs. They're going all in.
Well, that's it, right? Like, I guess the proper way for me to say it too, there ain't going to be any easy games for the Leafs, right? Every game is going to be tough because every team brings their best against.
Every player, in some cases, too, bring their best, right? It's not just the teams.
And we saw that in the last game the Leafs played against San Jose, right? We saw what a Macklin Celebrini can do, right? We kind of saw what a Tyler Toffoli can do. Like in that game, Jack Thompson, I don't really know much about him, but he scored his third goal of the season against the Leafs in that game. I look at a player like William Eklund, Alex Wenberg. Like these are terrible players, but these are not players that the Leafs should be losing to. By the way, Jack Thompson. I remember everyone saw him a Cordis, Ontario native, so Canadian there. Tyler Toffoli. So the big one here for me is that the Leafs, when I look back at that game against San Jose, they had a really good start. Good start. Even the second period, they go out to get the 2-goal lead. I think like the second period, they dominated them. The shots were 11-3 in that point. They scored 2 goals. Tavares scored. Nye scored 2 goals on the power play. And then the offense dried up. The defense couldn't hold the lead. And they lose in the shootout. They didn't lose in overtime. They lost in the shootout.
Yeah.
So I think the big one here with the Leafs, where I think things got better since that time, because at the time the Leafs had that winning streak. They lost San Jose and they went on the 3-game winless slide. But there was a 5-on-5 score that they were really struggling with at that time. I think that's been the biggest change for the Leafs coming into this game. I think they've really found the right chemistry with the lines. I think you're likely going to see the same lineup that you saw against Philadelphia. But I think the big one here is 5-on-5. You're seeing a much better chemistry and production all around.
Yeah, keep in mind Austin Matthews, and this is where when you lean on the need of Matthews to score and to play better, he led the league in 5-on-5 in the past. Looking here, since 2009 and 10, he led the league in 5-on-5 scoring and being on the ice positively. So, that's something the Leafs need from him. I don't know, David, he's starting to look a little better. It's these kinds, it's these kinds of games. And I think the last game, he was making some moves. He looked a little more powerful out there. His skating looked a lot better. I'm beginning to think that it was a lower body injury that's nagging him, not going away. And he's looking a little more mobile, because he's looked pretty slow this year compared to how I remember him, or maybe I've imagined it. I don't know. He just didn't seem as quick and that's, I think, the key word with Matthews. It's not really about overall speed. It's about his quickness, his darting speed. He makes, because of his physical body, he just has to separate himself a little bit, and then he uses his body to do the rest. He's not getting away from checkers. He wasn't anyway. He's doing a little better now in the past game or two.
I guess the big one for me is we haven't seen him create a lot of space for himself. Maybe that's kind of the way I see things.
That's kind of the way what I'm seeing too, and that's what I'm saying it a different way. But that's about space that he's not creating that we're used to him creating,
or just getting himself open in the ways that we had come to expect from him. So, yeah, I think that with Matthews, this is, as you said, a good opportunity for him to get over. Well, not even get over. I don't know if he can get over what he's going through, but just find more consistency in his game. The two, yeah, you're gonna sacrifice a little bit on the offensive side if you're gonna be playing better defensively, right? And that's really got to be the important factor here for this Leafs team, is to see Austin Matthews play that responsible game.
Absolutely.
He at this rate, you want to see him get his offense going. You want to see him find that groove offensively, but I also just want to see him stay healthy.
Yeah, well, that's really important. And another thing sort of thing I'm looking for when they play these kinds of teams is the top six have to expose the lack of talent in the other team's top six. And the bottom six on the Leafs cannot be outworked by the bottom six of the other team.
Yes.
And what we've seen with the losses is that's what happens, is that the bottom six on the other team works harder than the Leaf bottom six. And unfortunately, we've heard it a few times that, well, the Leaf best players tonight weren't the best players. So, there's truth to that. And that's what the Leafs have to do. They have to be who they are, quite frankly, not be who they think they should be based on the opposition. They have to play their game. Forget the other team. Forget what you're up against. They got to do what they do best, each player on the team. And that's how they prepare, David, I think, for the playoffs, when every player starts to play their best game.
I totally agree with that. And I see what I definitely see with the Leafs here is, I mean, look, San Jose's got a lot of young talent, a lot of young guys they're bringing through. They just signed Cameron Lund to a 3-year entry-level deal. He's going to be he's expected to make his debut tonight. He's a two-time nominee for the Hobey Baker Award. So, another top end kind of prospect for San Jose, 2nd round pick back in 2022. So they got, yes, I understand this is not a good team. This is a team that on paper doesn't have a lot of talent in comparison to what the Leafs have. But I'm also looking at a team that's bringing young guys who are going to be hungry for those opportunities, right? To show against an Austin Matthews, a John Tavares, a Mitch Marner, what they can do, right? We heard a little bit about it, in the first game going up against these two clubs. So if I'm the Leafs, the big thing here is you've got the talent advantage over San Jose, but what you have to remember is this is a San Jose team that hasn't made it easy on their opponents either. It's Boston lost to San Jose the last time these two teams played. Guys are going to want to finish the season strong. I think it's going to be a little different than when you saw in Philadelphia, because Philadelphia, San Jose has in ways thrown in the towel, but Philly, that was a team that didn't care. It looked like it's just a team that had just given up. So I think
and the reason that's important is because we're at the point in the season where the coaches have a short memory. By that I mean how they play in these next games depends. It creates who has the leg up in playing in the playoffs, because there are a lot of interchangeable parts on this Leaf team. This is what makes the team so good, and this is where they can lean heavily into, and that is ice time. That's the biggest power a coach has, and you don't play enough if you're not on the ice.
I think that's probably if I'm Craig Brew right now, my message is to the bottom six, telling them we can see a lot of movement between now and the end of the season. You got Max Pacioretty, who will want to get a spot back in the lineup when he's healthy, right? There are players right now who aren't playing at their best. We have a guy like Scott Laughton who's still struggling to find his footing here. The message should be, okay, this is going to be an opportunity for you guys to show who wants the opportunity, right? That's what these next few games have to do, in my opinion, have going for in terms of trying to motivate and get this team going. All right, we'll put a wrapper on this game, because I do want to talk about a subject that doesn't exactly align too greatly with fans lately. There's Cha-ching. Yes, we heard some reporting about some unfortunate increases coming to Leafs fans, something that they've heard many times before. But is this the time where fans are starting to put their foot down a little bit? We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is also brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire somebody yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posting on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. The last thing you want to have happen is the pressure causing you to have setbacks because you don't have that right person in the job. And if you don't, every day you don't have that right person, it costs you money. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. And so now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Locked On Leafs podcast continues here. David Morassutti, and joining me is my good friend Frank Stanisci. Thank you guys for making Locked On Leafs your first listen. And if you're looking for a second listen, you can go check out the Locked On NHL podcast. You got local experts bringing you coverage of all the league-wide news and their opinions. Plus, you can also give your third listen to Locked On Blue Jays as the Toronto Blue Jays open their season to this Thursday afternoon against the Baltimore Orioles. So they love good opening day. And it gets to this thought about, trying to have that, there's competition within the sports market right now that the Jays are back with the Leafs here. There's going to be a bit, and TFC's playing. The Raptors season will eventually be ending soon. Where the Raptors will be, we'll see. Most likely not going to be going to the playoffs. But there's always this competition, right, for trying to get people into the stadiums. We just talked in the first segment about the Blue Jays having giveaways, right, the jerseys and all those things to try to bring in fans. And I think the big one here for Leafs fans, I don't know the last time the Leafs have not had a sold-out building or a full building. To me, it's pretty much all my life. The demand for Leaf games has always been there. And Frank, we know that with demand comes costs because supply not as high for Leaf games. If you want to go to a Leaf game, we tell you guys to go to an app like Game Time who sponsor us to give you the best deals possible rather than trying to buy it off of somebody off the street. Those games are those days. If you're doing that nowadays, you're putting yourself in a bad situation. Go and use someone like Game Time. At least you got the security to know you're getting a proper ticket, and you can compare with other things. So use Game Time if you're going to do it. Ticketmaster, we know. I'm not even going to get into the whole Ticketmaster situation and how they have scammed people in the past, or how people have made money through Ticketmaster. But this all started. Mike and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, and that was kind of my fault too. I didn't bring it up. But about a week ago, a little over a week ago, James Myrtle put out a story about Leafs fans receiving a nuts. Anytime you get these messages from the team that you are buying season tickets from, it's never a good feeling. But essentially, Leafs fans were led to be known. Season tickets were told that there's going to be increases to the ticket packages for the 2025-2026 season, more than 20% in some sections. 20%. Some people might think 20% is significant. So just to give you, as Myrtle wrote, 2 season tickets went from $8,500 this season in the purple sections. That same pair of tickets will rise over $10,000. So obviously there's a lot of people not too happy to hear about that, and especially with the playoffs ticket package. I mean, look, if you're at least season ticket holder, you haven't been spending too much money on playoff games because you've had a maximum of 5-6 games in the playoffs at one point.
You don't win a series 2 or 3 max.
Yeah, so this has really been a tough period in terms of MLSE's always making money at least, but they haven't had that playoff. They have all this revenue coming in, but they don't even have the maximization of playoff revenue. But Frank, when you hear 20% is being increased, and it seems like there's the home ha, people aren't happy about it. My thinking is the problem is people are still going to pay it. It's like the housing market in Toronto. Yeah, people are not happy about how much it costs, but guess what? People are still paying it, even though if it's going to put them in the red quite a bit.
I guess my problem with it, my primary problem with it, the first thing I think about is because I'm not really a season ticket holder, so I don't know what that's like. So for me, it boils down to simple math. And here's what I'll say. I when I heard that a week ago, I started looking around the other teams, see what they're charging type thing, right? And I drew a conclusion. I said to myself, the Leafs are raising the price of their tickets as much as a lot of the teams that I saw charge for the tickets to begin with. That's the way I framed it in my mind. I'm going, their increase is more than some fans pay for their tickets, for example, in Florida. You know what I mean? So you know, and you know, the common conversation, and people say it, and anybody who's not really paying attention thinks it's crazy. But a lot of people go, hey, how do you feel like going to Florida for the weekend? Yeah, well, not a bad idea. Let's get 2 tickets on the airline. We'll get 2 tickets to the game. We'll come back home. We'll spend a couple of days on the beach, and we'll spend less money than we go to the Leaf game. And some people think that's a joke. Some people think that's not true. But in fact, it is true, which is why, again, I frame it as the Leafs will be, if they do it, which they're saying, they're pledging they're going to do it. They've already told the fans. They will be raising the price of their tickets more than some teams charge to begin with. And that's a pretty good place to be if you're the owner of a sports franchise, when you can do that in the grand scheme of things, looking across the league.
Yeah, I think that's really it, right? You're looking at an ecosystem right now where MLSE's been like, well, we're gonna charge because even if those fans say we don't want the tickets, we got a long list of people who are gonna say yes, they want it. And there's 2 issues with that. One is obviously fans have this passion and want to go see the team, and they're gonna pay the price, and the price is the price, and that's it. They have you know, and that. The 2 other concerns that have come to mind, one being the atmosphere at the arena, where it's become more and more corporate. This doesn't exactly help fans get into the building because you're be charging the fans more, and corporations in a lot of cases, some of them are able to write these as much of these off as they own with the accountants that have the ability to do it. But the big one here for me isn't necessarily how much the season ticket holders are spending, because that's a significant amount. I feel for them. These are people who've been, you know, I know somebody who's had season tickets well back to when they were at the Gardens. Like this is a tradition for them. But really where it hurts is the people who have season tickets only to go and turn those tickets around for a profit. And what's going to happen is, yes, they're going to be paying more, which means people who want to find tickets and have to go to Game Time, go to these other websites, are going to have to pay more. And for the Leafs, it's like, well, we don't control what is being sold. Well, actually, the Leafs could have more control of it. They just choose not to because they want to make sure that they're getting their money first. And I always had that problem. I don't know how you feel about that, Frank. But
well, I have an opinion on it as an observer again, and here's an observation. I know a few people who have season tickets, and over time, I know many people have had season tickets, you know, going back decades, right? And there's always, I don't want to paint people who sell their tickets. I want to also speak to the other people in that group. There are actually some people, and the pay hike won't affect them. The people that sell tickets so they can afford to buy the season tickets. So they'll dispense of a few tickets. The price goes up by 20%. Yeah, they'll pay 20% more for their ticket, but they'll make 20% more for, and they'll get that money back, and that cost will get basically canceled out, right? So those people can probably still do what they're doing, but what it comes down to is, can you afford to go to a game, to a Leaf game? And most people that go to a Leaf game, right, that want to go to a Leaf game, they only can afford to go to one or two games. So that 20% is a big number, as big as it is for somebody who buys the season tickets. But as I said, they can shelter themselves by selling a couple of tickets and basically, dispense of some of the cost, required to buy the season tickets. And one thing's for sure, you're not going to get stuck with your tickets. That will happen again if the Leafs, if let's say they slipped out of the playoffs, they'd have a hard time selling tickets next year. There would be people that would be very unhappy. Keep in mind, the level of frustration by Leaf fans is always simmering just below the waterline. And that's why whenever they lose a game, it's like, oh my God, everybody's hair's on fire, because everybody wants so much for the Leafs to win a cup. The desire is so strong that anything that gets in the way of that belief is a horror story. And raising the price of tickets, hopefully will help the Leafs be a better team. But the only place the Leafs, the MLSE can use Leaf money they put together is on everything except the players. But David, you and I both know that the Leafs have an advantage because of that. It may not be as specific, it may not be as obvious, but there are subtle advantages that they should and can use to offset not wanting to play in a market like this because it's too intense, or the tax situation in Canada, or the tax situation in Ontario, whatever negative you want to talk about. The fact the Leafs can make more money, Leaf fans also hope, people like me hope they'll use it in an efficient way to offset some of the negatives that unfortunately Toronto has to deal with as a place for the game. And to your point, and I'd like to put a final on this one. They're missing a lot of money in the playoffs. There's a possibility of 28 games you can play, divided by 2 on average, right? Because home and away, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's 14, a possibility of $14 million. I don't know if it's even only $1 million now. It might be $1.5 million, $2 million now a game, right? That's a lot of money. And we talked last show, that's a third of the schedule. But the ticket prices are at least 40, maybe 40, 50% more.
Yeah, no, I just see this as, Leafs fans have to take the burden of something that really shouldn't be on them to take the burden of, which is, it's not their fault the Leafs haven't had that success in the playoffs that have led to them getting those that extra revenue that they're looking for. So yeah, I think that
well, it's a lose-lose, David. The ownership loses, the fans lose, the players lose, because players can make everybody gets a benefit if the Leafs, for example, win a cup. The players, the fans, and ownership, and the management staff. Everybody wins. That's why there's so much pressure on winning the cup.
There is. So I don't know. It's unfortunately the only way that ever changes is if the Leafs don't have that demand for tickets and they have to lower the price. But yeah.
I don't even think they're like. Look, I look at it this way: expectation in here of the Leafs winning the cup is based on the fact that they have the financial wherewithal to do something in giving themselves an edge to win a cup. But part of it also is, and we've learned this, David, the breaks do matter. But you make your own, breaks, right? The team has to do that. But a missed high stick against Gretzky. Would that mean the Leafs going to the Stanley Cup that year? Could they have won the cup? We have seen, Tavares getting hurt against Montreal, and that was the pandemic one, right? If he hadn't got hurt, would the Leafs have been able to beat Montreal and clearly step into the path that Montreal had in that Stanley Cup, being in the same division as multiple Stanley Cup winners? So where the Leafs are, the situation that happens when they play, I always look at the Toronto Raptors and the way they won their championship. Nobody predicted they would, but a series of good things happened to that team. They made a good choice on bringing a player in that nobody wanted to take a chance on, and they had a couple of breaks. And who will ever forget the shot from the corner that hit the rim 7 times before it went? This is why we love sports so much, because hope is always about opportunity, and opportunity doesn't get killed until you're dead. In other words, you're losing, you're 3-0 because hockey has a history of teams coming back more than any other. You're behind 3-0 or 3-1, you can do it. And that's what hockey fans love. I think that's the biggest thing. That's the challenge to be a Leaf fan, because you see all these other teams accomplish stuff and you're going, why not us?
Yeah.
Sorry about the rant.
The constant struggle of Leafs fans. But we'll see. We'll kind of see we'll watch how that story develops. We'll end it there for today, because we got a game happening against the San Jose Sharks tonight. Let's see if the Leafs are able to pull out the victory and start the California road trip on a positive note, continue that momentum from the Flyers game. And we'll break it all down here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. I want to thank Frank for joining me. We'll catch you guys on Friday, where we'll break down the victory. We will preview the weekend back-to-back. What can we expect as the Leafs continue and try to push for an Atlantic Division title? We'll discuss that next here on Locked On Leafs podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure you tell your friends to subscribe. Join us over on YouTube, trying to get to the 10K subscriber mark so we can eventually give away a jersey. So we'll have more details once we get closer to that. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, tell your friends, and keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.